Hi, and welcome to the first episode of what is tentatively called Let's Make a Game. So this is basically a project where I'm building a game within a month, which I've been on for the last 3 months each month. And this time I want to pay a lot more attention to the time it takes, and I thought one way to do that would be doing them as a series of video posts about how I go about building my little test games, my little fun projects. The idea here is that by doing a recording, I give myself a fixed schedule and a fixed amount of time, and then I can learn not just the technical skills about game development, but the organizational skills. Unfortunately, the first episode I had a recording mishap, and the camera is covering most of the screen, so I'm putting this small intro clip at the beginning of the first episode just to kind of make up for that and explain why the rest of the episode you can hear what I'm saying and you can kind of see what I'm doing, but it's kind of disappointing. From now on, I'll make sure to make the recordings a lot better. But that's part of the learning process. So before jumping into that, I'll just show what would have been missed from not being able to see it in the actual clip. Throughout the process, I'm going to be keeping notes about the 25 hours I expect to spend on the game, a set of tasks that I currently have pending to work on, and my current schedule and goal for what's going to be done within each of these sessions. My first session went pretty well. I got all the things done that I expected. I took some ongoing notes about the process that I went through, and I kind of planned out a rough sketch of the next two things that I want to work on. Part of the video that I recorded included this sketch of the actual behavior of the game, which shows different types of interactions with this little light on and off puzzle game that I made. And I also built a very simple prototype here, it just kind of shows what it does. I'm only showing it now because in the video itself you won't be able to see what it's doing. I also built a simple editing mode which can be used to kind of make specific puzzles. So I think that the whole project actually went pretty well, and I'm hoping that the rest of it goes as well as this. Enjoy the rest of the video and hopefully come back for episode 2. I want to do an experiment within this month to basically pay more attention to what I'm doing with my time, how I'm budgeting and scoping the effort and timeline of development. I've got a background of a web developer for over a decade, and I'm pretty good at knowing what goes into the things I build there and how long things are going to take and the effort I'm looking at, but I don't have those skills as a game developer yet, so to try to catch up my ability to gauge game development effort to my ability to gauge my day-to-day work effort, I'm going to pay a lot of attention to what I'm doing this month, and I thought the best way to do that would be to do everything in set hour chunks so I know exactly how much time I'm spending. I'm going to try to plan out that this project should take 25 hours. It's a very small puzzle game. And as I go, I'm going to plan out what I'm going to do through that time and keep a log of how each of those hours went. And at the end of it, hopefully, I'll find out if I estimated too low, estimated too high. I'll learn some things about how to change scope throughout the development process, how to adjust as things take more time or some things go well, and how to figure out how much time I have left and what still fits in with that so that I can get everything wrapped up by the end. I don't know if 25 hours was too much or too little. Like I said, it's a small thing. I've done one game a month for 3 months now, and the fact is I don't know how much time I spent on any of those games. Saying that I did one each month is not helpful if I have no idea how much of the month I was spending doing the development. So this is an effort to keep better track of that, and the recording is kind of a way of keeping me both honest about it, but also making sure that through that hour I'm focusing on that one thing, and then I have a good documentation of it. So going to start the recording now. Well, sorry, the recording. Going to start getting into the game. So the game I'm doing this month is actually the first game I tried to do in Unity, but that was before I learned enough to do a good job of actually finishing a project. So I thought it would be a great thing to go back and finish a game. I'm going to start over on it though because I didn't know how to structure projects back then, and I don't really know if it's even compatible with the current version. So this game is called Off and On Again. It is a puzzle game with a grid of lights where toggling will toggle both the light that you tap and also the ones sort of in a cross shape around it. And the goal will be in each level to turn them off, and then in some levels we may have special kinds of pieces that will maybe toggle an entire row or an entire column or all the ones around them. So I'm going to sketch out a little bit because I think that would be a helpful way to start. I had a little technical difficulty there, got that all sorted out, ready to get back to this. So I'm going to sketch, we'll start out the project by sketching out what I actually expect this to look like and how I expect it to act. So the basic idea of this game is a grid of lights. And that grid is basically a bunch of buttons that you can toggle on and off. Let me just sketch this out. This part is a little slow. No, I bet there's... So I'm thinking probably a 5x5 grid. I was thinking into making some levels. I might change the size of that, so it's a little flexible. That's flexibility is a good thing. So the basic idea of how this is going to work is when you tap on any one space, that light and the lights directly around it are all going to turn off or on depending on what else. So the toggle. If some of them are on and some of them are off, they'll all flip in reverse. And there's also going to be a few with symbols on them like these, which will toggle basically a whole row or a whole column. And it'll add an ability to make some of the puzzles a little more diverse. And I think there might also be one with a kind of square shape on it that kind of toggles everything around it a little bit larger than the normal one. And there's a potential of adding maybe some color swapping ones, but I think that right now I'm going to plan for just the on and off because I want to keep this simple. I'm planning for 25 hours. So I'm going to get started now on a little bit of setup. So I have my notes here. I sketched the basic idea. I explained what I'm trying to do with this whole thing. And here, and I'm gonna do a little bit of project setup, which is of course how any new thing starts. So now I've been doing Unity work for a little over a year, but a lot of it's been off and on. No pun intended. The main reason I've been doing these game a month things is I've bitten off a lot of projects that were a lot longer term or maybe just a lot out of scope of what I could accomplish at the time, and I thought this would really be a really good way of getting in a lot of practice with projects that I can wrap up and move on to something else if I get frustrated by my inability, my lack of experience, or running into problems I didn't expect. I'm going to focus on wrapping up the game no matter what it is I can get finished. And I can learn from that project each month and take that on to the next one. And so far that's been going really well. So far I think I've gotten a little bit better at what I'm doing. I'm learning. But the way that I'm trying to do a lot more structure and organization in this month is definitely the result of not learning fast enough. So that's something I definitely want to improve on, and at the end of this month, hopefully I can find out if it worked and if there's adjustments I need to make, and hopefully I'll come out of it able to take on the next project even better. And I don't know if I'll continue doing it in this particular way, but we'll see what happens. We'll see how it goes. I will apologize for some slowness that's going to happen in some of this. In bad luck, right before I tried to do this project, I had some bad RAM in my machine, and I'm still kind of howling along without enough RAM. So my machine's not as powerful as it usually is, and it's pretty frustrating, but it's still not unusable. Pieces are on the way, but right now that's just how it is. So Unity creating this project is a little slow right now. Maybe I could use some of that time. Oh, here it is starting up. So right now my plan for today, for this one first hour session, is to do a little bit of project setup. There won't be very much to do there. Possibly to start cobbling together a very basic prototype, just getting the primary interaction down, which is kind of how I start a lot of projects. I'm also going to spend a little bit of time maybe itemizing a few tasks that I expect I need to do early on in the development, and once I have those put together, I'm going to start planning what sessions or what hours I expect those to do in. So like, how much can I expect to finish in the second hour, and if there's more than I expect to be able to get done, I'll put those in the third one. And that's part of this experiment about, am I able to plan how much I can do in that time? So first thing is going to be a little project setup and a very rough prototype, something I can cobble together in like 10 minutes, and hopefully that goes quick. So we are. I do expect this particular project to be a mobile game. So first thing that I'm going to do, very first thing, is switch over to Android mode and Unity, and set up my editing and screen builds. So when I am doing any Android work on Unity, I always do a split scene and game windows like so. There's enough room with the vertical screen there to do that, so it's a lot easier than switching back and forth. I find that I like working that way. Second thing I always do in new projects is to create a few organization folders. So just scripts, audio, sprites, prefabs. I don't know if this game will use it, but I'll create the usual resources folder for Unity. That's where runtime loaded assets are placed. And if I'm missing anything, I remember whenever I have to create it, so I'm going to leave that as is. Oh, yes, and my scenes. Which, first thing I will do is just create a file for the scene. I'll go ahead and save this empty one just to get started, and this will be my prototype. Okay. Alright, so we're going to get this started, and I think this game, given the nature of the game, I think it makes sense to basically use Unity's UI stuff for this. I think that is just a fine way of utilizing that for control over the layout, as opposed to managing a bunch of regular 2D sprites. Whenever this is, things are going to be moving around, there's just sort of a fixed layout and structure to this, so I think that makes a lot of sense. So we're going to start putting that together. We're going to set this up as a, we give it some aspect control so that it's always a square shape. We're going to give it a right. We're going to give it a grid control so that we can start creating some stuff inside of there, which are basically now our buttons. Yeah. I'm not sure if they need to literally be buttons, but for the moment, that's what we're going to do. And see, we want 25 of these, so I'm going to create 5 first, and then duplicate those a few times. 15, 20, and 25. And just adjust this. Get them centered a bit. Alright, so here we have a pretty simple layout. And right off the bat, I'm going to wish that I made a prefab for this because I'm going to want to make changes that apply to all of them. So I'm going to fix that mistake right now. And now that this is a prefab, this would just allow me to make bulk changes to all of them, especially in the nested structures, a lot easier. For example, first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the button text. We don't actually need that here. So that clears all of them. And then of course we're going to want to add some behavior. So okay, new script, grid cell control, and create that. And open that up, which is going to initialize. I do use Visual Studio, at least on my Windows machine, as opposed to MonDevelop. I feel a lot happier with it. Mono's a little clunky, a little slower, and frankly, I just kind of like using the tool that was designed for the language. I do all my Unity development in C#, and I've really liked working with Visual Studio a lot more all the time. So I'm enjoying it. See, I do want to move the script where it's supposed to go. I think I'm gonna kill Visual Studio and restart it because I decided to open from a previous project. So as soon as that closes, I'll do that. I think while I'm waiting, I'm going to go ahead and create a kind of controlling script for the grid as a whole to kind of complement the controlling scripts for the individual cells. I'm going to kind of itemize what I'm doing right now. Put up in the basic interaction. These components for grid of cells. Alright, let's go ahead and initialize Visual Studio. While I am overall happy with Visual Studio, I will say that it's shocking that it takes so long to open. I don't know if that's just because I still got a bit of an older machine that is then also hobbled or not, but it is what it is. Once it gets open, it's pretty fine. Alright, here we go. So the first thing that we're going to want to do, just to kind of set up basic interaction for how Game Artist, just sort of as a prototype to get the feel for whether or not it's working right, is buttons that we can click, and we're going to want to toggle those. The first thing is that very simple toggle. Go ahead and move this where it needs to go. So since these are extending the built-in Unity UI stuff, we're going to import that and get access to its button. And a simple way to toggle that. And let's take a look at what button operations we have to work with. So the buttons all have a color and a highlight color. I think it's that normal color is the one that we're going to be toggling. So we can find the name of that. All right. We're going to want to keep the state in this. So we're going to have a simple bool on or off. We'll start everything to on just right now. Not sure if the goal, honestly, is going to be turning all the lights off or to turn all of them on. So when toggling, we'll flip the value of that, and then based on that, set up our color. So on will be white, and this off, black. Okay, so I find I'm actually not sure how to change the value of this. So, something to look up. Unity 3D, change button color. There's a little frustrating amount of immutable stuff in Unity structures. Sometimes not really sure why they are set up the way they are. Alright, guess the configuration for the colors and the actual rendered colors are different. So we're just going to do this. And back to Unity. It's reloading our changes, and we're going to set up this button. Triggering on itself in our grid cell controller. Apply that to all the buttons and see if this worked. Of course, the results of today's little prototype are not going to be very exciting, but this is just about getting a basic structure in place and then planning out what to do from there. Having even the most basic starting point is the best way I have of then planning how to get from there. Planning what to do from nothing, from scratch, is always a lot more daunting. All right. So now we're going to have to find a way of accessing the sibling cells in the grid layout. So find if there is a way to do that through the grid layout group. And sometimes the best thing to do is just kind of poke through the autocomplete and see what's available. And that's not helpful, so and check out if there's a way to do this directly. So let's search for that. And if there's not a built-in way to do that, then we'll have to keep track of them ourselves. Alright, a little frustrating, a little annoying, but not an unsurmountable issue. Sure. So we'll create a simple structure for storing these cells. I think all the individual cells should also know where they are. I'm going to make those public fields just so that the grid can tell them where they are as it's stepping through. And we're going to step through the columns first, and every time that hits 5, we'll go back and increment the row count. That should let us sort of walk through everything. And these are going to need access to their own grid object as well, so it's going to tell them where it is. And just to test that working out, we're going to give a make it an attempt here. Now we do want to make sure when one cell toggles another, that doesn't then in turn toggle the next ones, and so on and so on. So we will make a specific method just for toggling cells. And that will be the one toggled first for itself and then for its neighbor, which we'll try first with just one. And we'll see if any of that had a problem. Forgot to initialize list of cells, so we're going to do that. Might wonder why I'm using nested lists instead of dictionaries for these, and I can explain. I found that dictionaries do not serialize by default in Unity, which means any kind of code reloading which relies on the serialization immediately breaks because the the restart serialization process will actually just wipe out the contents of a dictionary. So if you use those for important state in any of your components, code reloading will be broken, which is kind of a pretty frustrating oversight. If there is a possibility of working around it by writing your own kind of dictionary that handles serialization, but I find it's easier in a lot of these cases to just use lists instead, and kind of use dictionaries as a form of cache more than anything. Alright, looks like the initialization did not work. Alright, so basic interactions working, although right now we're only doing this in one direction, so now we know it works. Add the other ones. I did notice that the coordinates were backwards, and I figure that's just something we can fix in the future. It's just a prototype. And I just want to get this prototype just working from a kind of interaction feel first, and then start planning out things to do from there. And I'll make a note about the backwards coordinates. Alright, this is looking pretty good. This is behaving exactly as I wanted. But I'm gonna guess there's gonna be a bug if I try to hit anything on the edge. And that's just fine. Totally expected. So this does need to return. This needs to handle that. Which also means everywhere that invokes it, it's gonna have to check that it got the right one. So I'm gonna kind of wrap that up. Think that the grid should have kind of a way of handling this for us, so that way it can handle the check in one place instead of having to do it everywhere that we call. So as long as that hands back something, that actually simplifies a lot of our code here. So sort of win-win. About 20 minutes left on this session. Alright, didn't expect that. Thought that was all sorted out. Just the wrong exception, that's all. Alright, now it is working beautifully. So this might be an example of a puzzle that you might solve in this game. We basically have to walk backwards from how it was created and try to figure out what pattern of toggling on and off would get us back. So if I was playing this level, I might start off sort of like this and clear the board. And that's essentially the whole game, is that kind of interaction. Here'd be another example puzzle. You have to try to figure out how to step backwards. It seems pretty obvious whenever you're looking at how they were made. You can just do it in reverse, but if you're playing this game and you only see how they're starting out, I think it's going to be a pretty good challenge for players to figure out exactly what to do. It'd be really easy to get lost and having to probably have to add a level reset. And I think that's what we're going to use the rest of this time for, is sort of what should we do next. Actually, I just had a quick idea. So I want to make it a little easier to create basically test levels or ideas for how these puzzles work. Having to actually play the game in reverse to do that might be a little complicated, so I'm going to add basically a shortcut way of editing. Essentially, what I'm going to say is if you're holding down the one button when you click an item, we'll just skip talking to any of the other ones. That'll give us a way of just directly editing the board. It's sort of a debug edit mode that will make it a lot easier to edit levels as we play around with the mechanics. Sure we didn't break the actual. Okay. Alright, so that'll make level editing a lot easier. So we might say, here's a puzzle, fix that, and now when playing, I have to try to figure this out. See, I can't even solve my own puzzle, apparently. Alright, so I think that's good for prototype. I'm going to save the scene, and before getting into any other kind of planning, very important to save our work in all ways. So we're going to initialize the new Git repository where we'll be storing everything. And I usually just copy my gitignore from previous projects because it's just sort of boilerplate. So I'm going to do that from the last game I made. That's a lot cleaner. I'm going to add those files. And just commit that as a initial commit. Great, that's all ready. Down to 15 minutes on the clock, and I'm going to do just a little bit of planning. So this kind of behavior is what we wanted. The game has that basic interaction in place, and so now it's time to just sort of look at what's going to be done over the next several sessions. All right, so one of the things that I'm learning to focus on is kind of getting the full arc of the game experience in place early on. That's things that don't always seem very exciting to build. So I don't want to wait until the very end and find I need to rush to add a title screen, credits, high scoreboard, things like that. So those are all things that I want to try to get in place early on, so that the rest of the plan is just the actual content of the game. So these were sort of the bookends of the experience, and I want to get those in place. If we have this way of editing the levels, then we're also going to want to be able to do level saving so that we can use that as an actual editor through the game. So, and if we're going to do that, then we need to have a way of loading those levels. We're going to have to have a way of doing level selection so the user can progress through the game. And so we talked about those alternative behavior pieces. So that would be full row toggle pieces and full column toggle pieces, and the other was the sort of a different toggle shape, the square toggle piece. And of course these not even placeholder graphics, just the standard UI button is not going to cut it. So I need some art assets, which are going to include things like title logo, the button off, the button on, the row, column, and square symbols that will be on those additional buttons. I haven't created a kind of like a opening splash screen logo for my little single person game studio, so I should do that. And I go by Stonebird Games, so you have to find time to create that, because I think that's definitely time I start adding a little bit of branding or identification within those. So I think those were accomplished, and now the last thing on the agenda is just planning for session 2. Alright, so there's I'm sure a lot more than this to do, and a lot of these are pretty broad tasks that are going to get broken down, and there's going to be issues that come out of them, but this is a rough overview of what I see right now. So, last thing to do is plan what I'm going to do next. And I do want to get those bookends in place, so I think that is going to be in place first. I'm not sure what happened there. And I think I accomplished some good things today. So I recording process, which had a few hiccups, and I'll learn to correct for those in the future. I set up the basic project. I prototyped the basic gameplay mechanic. That was good. I finished out the different interactions. I gave broad brushstrokes on the plan for everything that's going to be done, and planned session 2. Title and credit screen, definitely not enough for just that, so I do think we can do a little bit more. If I fix that bug that I've created, start the next session with fixing a bug. That's always a good way to feel good about the progress. And I think I'm going to do just a little forward planning and say that right now I expect to get these kind of alternate pieces in place early on. So I want to do those as part of the third hour of development. I think those are pretty easy to add on top of what I have now. And I fully expect there to be more, but I think I want to start out with sort of underestimating what I can do, so I got a little bit of wiggle room within each of those hours to pull in a little bit more, or to run into things I didn't expect. And hopefully, as I go through this process, I'll fill these out with more things, more effort. So this is extremely simple. This is not even barely worth being called a prototype, but it gets the basic idea across, and it gives a starting point, and that is always, I think, what needs to be begun with is just that starting point. Having something that you can interact with, touch, and use is the first immediate boost you need to getting your project started. If you start off, I think, for me at least, totally in abstract design land and don't have something to interact with, it can be a lot more difficult to see where you are, which makes it far more difficult to see where you need to go. So this is, for me, how I approach these and how I expect to continue to approach them, and hopefully something that works well. So I'm pretty happy with the progress today, even though it was not very much. I don't expect too much from the first session, from the first hour of development. So given any amount of progress, I feel pretty good about that. And I even feel like I could just toss on an extra little something, because, we don't have a logo yet, but certainly we could put something. Certainly not much. And I don't really see that I have anything else I can finish in this hour. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up. I had a few hiccups that took a little bit extra time, so while the video might not be the full hour, the time I took was definitely more. So see you next hour.